Hey everybody, Mark Boundy here. In my book, Radical Value, I talk about differentiation, how important it is, how it's the basis of your differentiated outcomes, which are the basis of your value. Differentiation is super important, but not all differentiation is created equal. There are multiple kinds of differentiation. So I wanted to talk to you about that today. So I've got this graph that talks about differentiation in terms of how effective it is in selling, or how valuable that differentiation is to the customer, from no value to the customer at all to lots of value to the customer, lots of effectiveness in the sales process. So the first kind of differentiation, it actually goes below. It's negative value differentiation. This is differentiation I want you to avoid, peel out of your sales decks, peel out of your marketing, because it actually harms you. This differentiation is differentiation that you claim is differentiation, but really isn't. The example I use is, we've been in business 27 years, when you've got a competitor that's been in business for 24 and another one that's been in business for 21. So when a customer hears that, they say, that's not important to me. I don't care about that. That's not really differentiated. That's not really valuable. You've just damaged your credibility with the customer, because when you talk about some of these other kinds of differentiation, they remember you thought this was important. So now I need to filter your messages and filter how valuable the rest of this kind of differentiation is. So be very careful about talking about differentiation that isn't differentiation. There's a second reason beyond losing credibility that that's more significant still. And that is, when you are flooding your customer with all kinds of detail and all kinds of information, and you're asking them to pick out the portions of that that they find valuable, that they find impactful, you're asking your customer to play Where's Waldo with your differentiation. And you don't want to do that. You want to be crisp and clean with what's differentiated, with what's valuable to them, so that they remember that. Customers forget a lot of what you said, and so you want to make sure that they forget, that they don't forget the critical parts. You want it to be impactful, because that's what they're going to remember. So if you bomb them with stuff, you're going to tempt them to glaze over when you actually say something important and of value to them, which leads us to the second kind of differentiation. And it's barely differentiation, and that is differentiation where you meet the requirements. And when I say that's barely differentiation, that means when you meet the requirements, just like your top 2 or 3 competitors, you at least don't get thrown out of the running. But you are the same as those top 3 or 4 competitors. So it's differentiation, only that it doesn't get you kicked off. The other thing about these kind of things, when they are the criteria that your customer laid out, is that typically there is one functional expert in the buying team that is responsible for validating and measuring that you meet the requirement that they specify. So purchasing has one set of requirements, price and delivery. Legal has one set of requirements, terms and conditions. IT might have a set of requirements for a software solution, interoperability, connectivity, and security. They don't care about the business functionality of it, but they do care about those kind of things. So what you want to do for this stuff is defer, much like this one here, where you don't want to crowd the customer with stuff that's the same. Even when it's the same, but it keeps you from being eliminated. So you want to talk about it, but you want to talk about it in a very controlled, confined fashion. Whenever possible, I want you to talk to that functional expert about their functional requirements. So you talk to IT about the IT issues, you talk to purchasing about the purchasing issues, and so on. So talk to the functional expert. When you're talking to the decision team at a whole, you want to make sure that you minimize the confusion, because these things here are the same as your top competitors. So you don't want to confuse your customer. You want to meet the requirements of these functional experts, but to the team, you want to say, you know, there's lots of people who meet these requirements, and I want to make sure that we work with those functional experts to help you confirm that you meet these requirements. But I want to spend the team's time here today talking about the stuff that is going to be much more important to you. So I don't want to blow you off on these things, but that's not the important thing. That's not what you're going to making your decision on. Let me talk to you about what I think is important and what you're really going to care about today. So some version of that, use your own bedside manner and your own inimitable relationship and customer skill to come up with your version of that same idea. Make sure you're not crowding the customer's mind with more of the same, because even though this is differentiated in a very narrow sense that you're not, it's differentiating to kick you out. Bottom line is you're the same. So don't crowd the customer's mind with I'm same. So don't talk about this to the team any more than you really have to. So that leads us to the third kind of differentiation, and that is kind of conventional differentiation. The example I use often, sorry if you've heard about this 10 times before, is the carpet that lasts 15% longer. So I could charge 14% higher price, that is until my competitor drops their price by 2%, and now I'm more expensive. So this is an advantage. This is oftentimes when a customer has these list of requirements saying these are required, but this would be a nice to have. This is when you have that nice to have, that's great, but your competitors often know how to counter this. So this kind of differentiation is what I call fist fighting in a phone booth. You have a differentiation, but it's not compelling, and your competitors know how to combat it. So like I say, I call this fist fight in a phone booth. Fighting in a phone booth. And my friend Christine politely called me old by saying, Mark, you know, not everybody knows what a phone booth is. So a phone booth is a small room about 2 feet by 2 feet that has an old style landline phone booth in it. So if you're sitting in this 2 foot by 2 foot space with somebody and you're trying to fist fight in it, nobody can wind up and nobody can injure each other because there's just not enough room to do any damage to each other. So when you win here, and you can win, you often win at a pretty insubstantial price margin. It's not very convincing to either you or your customer. So, and most importantly, it's not convincing to your customer. They'll buy from you, but not at any kind of a price premium that you have earned, that you should have earned. Which gets us to the third kind of differentiation, and where this was conventional meaning your customer understands it easily, your competitors do too, and they know how to fight it. Unconventional but repeatable is that same carpet that lasts 15% longer and you priced it at 15% more. Sometimes we can develop a value network which is a list of predictable value drivers that our product or service has described as customer outcomes. So that 15% longer wear was not only superior in dollars per year, right? That 15% more charge for something that lasts 15% longer. So, but there's a business disruption factor. So we worked with this client to develop a value network that predicted those kind of business disruptions because when it wears 15% longer, there are fewer replacement cycles, which means less business disruption less often. And so we developed that value. When we did a value network, we discovered that, and then we developed a standard questioning plan. So when an application came up for that kind of carpet that lasted that long, now there should be a standard operating procedure where we coach the salespeople to make sure you cover off on whether there's a business disruption issue. So what happens when you replace that carpet? If it's in the conference room, no big deal because we just replaced that carpet over the weekend. If that carpet is underneath our customer service, our 24/7 by 365 customer service office, that 2-day business disruption is actually so severe that it's worth more than the entire price of the carpet. So my competitor cannot discount their way out of this kind of advantage. As a matter of fact, my competitor can't even give carpet away free because the value of that business disruption is greater than the price of the carpet. So this is substantial value and it's predictable. You're not always going to find it. Sometimes the carpet is in a conference room, but if we have this kind of advantage, we're not going to stop at talking about dollars per year. We're going to start talking also about business disruption. So we have that value network, a questioning plan, and some business acumen so that once we start talking about that business disruption, we're able to talk and track down all the costs associated with that business disruption. And that gets us to the last kind of value, and that is it's also unconventional, but rather than being highly predictable that we could predict by developing a value network, it's unpredictable. I had, when I was at GE Capital, I sold a commercial real estate loan to the owner of a piece of commercial real estate, and somehow we got on the topic of his kids and his estate plan, and we found out that he had an estate planning issue coming up in the next 3 to 10 years. And I could fix that estate planning issue on this loan. And it was such an insignificant detail. I had authority to change it as a sales guy. I didn't even have to get a sales manager's approval to change this. It was that unimportant to GE, but it saved this customer $78,000 in estate planning costs. So because I had great questioning skills, and I had the acumen to ask questions to uncover that, I developed that great, that's a sales story we love to tell for the rest of our lives. And so you get epic hero kind of sales stories on these one-off value and one-off kinds of differentiation. I was the only one who could offer that kind of little switch to the terms and conditions, but it made a huge difference to that particular customer. So there are many kinds of differentiation, and not all of them are created equal. Some of them are of negative value. Some of them are of significant value. I try to get my clients to work over here in these two columns as much as possible so that they can develop more convincing sales at a higher customer preference at higher prices and higher margins. So not all differentiation is created equal. And I hope this helped. Give me a call if you've got any more questions, want to talk about this in greater depth. I'm at mark@boundyconsulting.com, or go ahead and send me a LinkedIn message. Thanks. Have a great day.